Okay, let's be real for a sec. Setting boundaries, it can be kind of tough.
For sure. Especially, for those of us who like always want to please everyone else first.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
politely saying no
Yeah.
to that extra slice of cake when, oh, you're already stuffed.
Yeah, you're spot on.
So that's why we're diving into this blog post today called Turns Out Setting Boundaries is Changing My Own Behavior. It's from Life Blog in 3 Cities, and I think it was from October 26th.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and what I loved about this post is that it goes beyond just, typical advice, and it really dives into, like, real-world examples, and it even looks at some advice from, get this, an Instagram lawyer.
Oh,
I
wow.
know, right? So get ready, folks, because we're about to unpack the world of boundaries. The blogger starts with this really simple but powerful definition. Anything that makes you uncomfortable is a boundary.
I love that. It's so simple, right?
Uh,
But it's true. And I think it really emphasizes that self-awareness piece, paying attention to those little moments of discomfort,
yeah,
like those internal, ugh, I don't really like this feelings.
right.
That can help you identify like what your boundaries actually are. It's like tuning into your own internal signals.
Like when someone's standing a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, exactly. It's not always obvious, but you just know something's a bit off.
Yeah. The blog actually gives a great example about waiting for people who are always late,
Oh, yeah.
and how it's about more than just being impatient. It's about valuing your own time.
It is, and expecting that same respect from others.
Yeah.
And it highlights how boundaries are often connected to our values.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are those deeper values that you hold? Figuring that out is key to setting boundaries that feel like truly authentic and strong.
So we've identified, some potential boundaries.
Mhm.
Now what?
Right.
Well, the blog gives us this 3 questions framework.
Oh, okay.
And the questions are, what do I want? What do I need? What can I do?
Those are powerful questions. I love that they shift the focus, right? Instead of focusing on what's happening externally, it's more about what you have control over, taking ownership, of your desires, your needs, and your actions.
Exactly. It's not about trying to control the other person. It's about, like, what you can do.
Yeah.
So the blog uses this example of a friend who's perpetually late,
Hmm.
always late. Let's say you're meeting them for dinner, and they're always like at least 30 minutes late.
Ugh, I know that type.
Right.
Yeah.
So you ask yourself those questions, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to avoid waiting around. I need my time to be respected. So what can I do?
And that what can I do part, that's where you start to define the boundary.
Yes.
Like maybe you tell your friend, hey, I really value our time together, but I'm also a stickler for being on time. Next time, let's aim to be there on time. And if something comes up, just shoot me a text.
Right. And it's not about, like, controlling them.
No,
It's just about setting that expectation,
exactly.
which kind of brings us to, the inevitable question. What happens when someone pushes against those boundaries?
Oh, yeah. That's the tricky part, right? Because it's so easy to fall back into those old patterns like tolerating bad behavior or trying to like change the other person.
You can't change other people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But the blog emphasizes this crucial point. It's about adjusting your response, not about controlling others.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
And this is where things get really interesting. The blog actually features this example from an Instagram lawyer.
Oh, an Instagram lawyer.
I know, right?
That's a thing.
It is. And it's about dealing with someone who's yelling at you.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
And, a lot of times our instinct is to yell back, right? Like we're trying to match their energy.
Yay, right. Try to make them see things our way.
Yeah, but that's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Yeah, it just fuels the fire.
Yeah. But the lawyer offers a different approach, which is to calmly state your response, like, I won't respond if you yell. And then, you disengage from the interaction.
So it's about recognizing you can't control their outburst, but you can control how you react to it.
Yes.
And that calm, assertive response, it can be so powerful.
The blog compares it to a lion.
Ooh, I like this.
Right. Like lions don't have to roar and scream to, establish their presence.
Yeah.
Their strength and their confidence, it speaks for itself.
It's such a powerful visual, right? That quiet strength that commands respect.
Exactly. So speaking of firmness, I'm curious, how do we actually maintain those boundaries? Because the blog mentioned something about 3 steps, right?
Yeah, you're right. There are 3 steps to boundary maintenance, and that lion-like calmness plays a big role.
Okay. I'm ready to channel my inner lion.
Let's do it.
Tell me more about these steps.
So the first step is awareness. It's about recognizing when a boundary is being crossed. It's that gut feeling, like a little internal alarm bell is going off and it's telling you something's not right here.
So it's not just setting the boundary in the first place, but actually being present enough to notice when someone's kind of stepping over the line.
Exactly. And once you're aware, the next step is adjustment. Calmly stating your response and acting accordingly. No need for, big pronouncements or drama, just a clear and firm statement of what you will and will not tolerate.
So in the yelling example, that's where you say, I won't engage if you yell, and then you actually disengage. Walk away, you up the phone.
Precisely. It's about aligning your actions with your words, which brings us to the third and often the most challenging step, acceptance.
Oh, acceptance. That sounds deceptively simple, but I have a feeling it's a lot deeper than it sounds. Acceptance of what, exactly?
Well, there are kind of two sides to this coin. First, you got to accept others' reactions. They might not like your boundaries, they might push back, get angry, or even try to guilt you into giving in.
Which can be so hard, especially, for people pleasers.
Oh, for sure. It's like our whole system short circuits when someone isn't happy with us.
Right. It feels wrong.
Yeah, it's a challenge. But here's the key. Their reaction is about them, not you. You've stated your boundary, you've taken a stand, and now it's up to them how they choose to respond. You've done your part.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like offering someone a piece of fruit. They can take it or leave it, but their choice doesn't change the fact that you offered it freely. And what about accepting our own negative emotions? Because...
Right, that's the part a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Because even when we know we're doing the right thing, setting these healthy boundaries, it can still trigger a wave of guilt, anxiety, or even fear.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like this inner voice whispers, wait, am I being selfish? Am I going to damage this relationship? And it's so hard to push past that.
Those thoughts are completely normal, especially if you're used to prioritizing other people's needs above your own. But the blog, it encourages us to normalize those feelings, to acknowledge that this is a process. It takes practice, and it's okay to feel a little wobbly at first.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to wobble. You might even fall a few times. But with persistence and a little self-compassion.
You'll eventually find your balance.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that self-compassion piece is crucial. Be kind to yourself, recognize that you're learning and growing, and remember, boundary setting isn't about being perfect. It's about progress, taking small steps in the right direction.
So how does this actually play out in real life? We've talked about the theory, but I'm curious to see how these steps work in different situations. Because the blog had some pretty relatable scenarios. Let's dive into those.
Let's do it. We could start with a classic example. Someone taking advantage of your generosity. They're always asking for favors, but rarely, if ever, reciprocate.
Ugh, I know that type. They're always borrowing that one ingredient you're out of, or asking for a ride when their car is in the shop again.
Yeah.
So what's the boundary-setting move in that situation?
Well, instead of passively resenting them or complaining to others behind their back, you shift to a more proactive approach. Using I statements, you clearly communicate your limit.
Can you give an example?
Sure. You could say something like, hey, I'm happy to help out sometimes, but I can't always drop everything to accommodate your requests.
I love that. It's clear, it's direct, and it really centers your own needs without, blaming the other person.
Exactly. And if they push back or try to guilt trip you, you just reiterate your boundary and state the consequence. For example, if you continue to ask me for favors without reciprocating, I'll have to decline more often.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not about punishing them. It's about
protecting yourself.
yeah, setting a clear limit for your own well-being. And what about dealing with someone who's constantly negative, just bringing everyone down with their endless complaints?
Oh, that one can be tough. But the blog suggests setting a time limit for those conversations. You might say something like, I'm happy to listen for a few minutes, but then I need to move on to other things.
Oh, I like that. It acknowledges their need to vent, but also,
It takes your energy.
yes, from getting sucked into their negativity vortex.
Exactly. And if they try to keep going past the agreed upon time, you gently but firmly redirect the conversation or excuse yourself. It's about setting that limit and sticking to it.
Speaking of limits, let's revisit the late friend scenario. We've already talked about communicating the boundary, but how do you actually enforce it when they show up late again?
Well, this goes back to aligning your actions with your words. If you said you won't wait more than 15 minutes, then you leave after 15 minutes.
Even if it feels awkward.
Especially if it feels awkward. It's about prioritizing your time and showing that you mean what you say. Your actions are speaking louder than words in this case.
Okay, I get it. It's about consistency follow-through.
Yes.
Last scenario. What about a work situation where you're constantly overloaded with tasks while others seem to have much lighter workloads?
That's a common one. The blog suggests advocating for yourself by clearly outlining your current commitments to your boss or manager. You'll get say something like, here's a list of the projects I'm currently working on. If I take on any additional tasks, the deadlines for these existing projects will need to be adjusted.
It's like bringing data to the table.
Exactly.
It's not just complaining.
Right.
It's presenting a clear picture of your capacity and workload.
Exactly. And it helps shift the focus from you're not working hard enough to we need to reevaluate the workload distribution. It's about being a team player, but also recognizing your own limits.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's not just about saying no, it's about communicating clearly, setting those expectations, and following through with action.
You got it. And throughout all these examples, there's this consistent theme of shifting from reactive to proactive behavior. It's about taking control of your experience rather than being at the mercy of other people's actions or demands.
And to really drive this point home, the blog makes this brilliant analogy. They compare boundaries to store hours.
I love that analogy. It's so simple, yet so effective.
Right. It's like a store has set operating hours. You wouldn't expect them to open early just because you showed up early or stay open late because you need one more thing.
Exactly. And boundaries are kind of similar. They're not personal attacks or signs of being difficult. They're simply the parameters within which you operate. Just like a store owner has the right to close up shop at the end of the day, you have the right to protect your time, your energy, and your well-being by enforcing your boundaries.
So someone pushing against your boundaries is like them trying to shop after hours. It's not about you personally. It's about them not respecting the established limits.
That's a great way to look at it. And when you start seeing boundaries this way, it can be incredibly freeing.
I'm really starting to see how this whole boundary thing can be a game changer. It's not just about avoiding uncomfortable situations. It's about empowering yourself to create a life that feels aligned with your values.
That's exactly it. And the blog author actually shares their personal experience of how boundary setting has led to some pretty amazing benefits.
Like what? I'm all ears.
Well, they talk about experiencing a significant reduction in anxiety.
Makes sense. If you're no longer constantly bending over backwards for everyone else, putting their needs before your own, you probably have a lot less to stress about.
Right. And they also mention feeling a greater sense of control and self-reliance. It's like you're finally in the driver's seat of your own life.
Yeah, like you actually have choices.
Exactly.
You get to make them.
You do. And the author even goes so far as to say that boundary work has helped them find inner peace and strength.
Wow, inner peace and strength. That's impressive. It sounds like setting boundaries isn't just about protecting yourself from negativity. It's also about creating space for, like, positive emotions, personal growth.
It's definitely about both. And I think that's what makes this whole concept so powerful. It's not just about saying no. It's about saying yes to yourself, to your well-being, to your authentic self.
Okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, putting this into practice still feels a little daunting. Where do we even begin?
Well, the blog leaves us with a really good question to kind of help us narrow our focus,
Oh,
to get us started.
I love a good thought-provoking question, so lay it on me.
It asks, what is one boundary you feel ready to start enforcing in your life?
Oh, I like that. Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed, right?
Yeah,
When you first start thinking about like all the areas in your life where boundaries might be helpful,
totally.
but just starting small can make a huge difference.
It can. And that one boundary doesn't have to be this like huge dramatic life change.
Right.
It can be something small,
Yeah.
something that feels doable, but still meaningful to you.
Like maybe committing to saying no to like one extra commitment this week,
Yes,
or setting a time limit for like scrolling social media each day.
exactly.
Those are things that I could actually see myself doing.
Yeah, those are great examples. It's about identifying those little areas where you feel like your energy being drained or your boundaries being nudged and starting to make those small but significant adjustments.
It's like reclaiming those little pockets of time and energy that we often give away without even realizing it.
And remember, you have the power to change your experience. It might feel uncomfortable at first to set those boundaries, especially if people are used to you always saying yes.
Yeah.
But with practice and a healthy dose of self-compassion, you can create a life that feels more aligned with your values and needs.
I think what resonated with me most from this blog is this idea that boundaries aren't selfish.
Oh, I love that.
Like they're actually a form of self-care.
Right.
And when we take care of ourselves, we're better equipped to show up for, the people and things that really matter to us.
That's such an important point. We often think of boundaries as being about, like, keeping people OUT.
Yeah.
But they can also be about creating space for the things we want to let in, you
Right.
know?
Right.
More joy, more peace, more authentic connections.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So to our listeners, what is that one boundary that you're ready to tackle? Take a moment to reflect on it. Maybe even jot it down somewhere visible as a reminder to yourself.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself, celebrate those small wins, and keep practicing. It's all about progress, not perfection.
I love that. All right, folks, that's a wrap on this deep dive into the world of boundary setting. Remember, you deserve to feel safe, respected, and empowered in your own life. So go out there, set those boundaries, and reclaim your peace.
And if you stumble along the way, that's okay. We all do. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep practicing. You've got this. It can feel overwhelming when you first start thinking about all the areas in your life where boundaries might be helpful.
It really can.
But the blog leaves us with a really good question to help kind of narrow our focus.
Oh, okay. I like
To
that.
help us get started.
Yeah, give me that question.
It asks, what is one boundary you feel ready to start enforcing in your life?
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in the theory and think we need to overhaul our entire lives, like right now,
Right, yeah.
overnight. But just starting small with one manageable boundary
One manageable boundary.
can make a huge difference.
It can, and that one boundary doesn't have to be some huge, dramatic life change.
Yeah.
It could be something small,
Right.
something that feels doable but still meaningful to you.
Like maybe committing to saying no to like one extra commitment this week,
Yes.
or setting a time limit for like scrolling social media each day.
Exactly.
Those are things that I could actually see myself doing.
Yeah, those are great examples. It's about identifying those little areas where you feel like your energy being drained or your boundaries being nudged and starting to make those small but significant adjustments.
Like reclaiming those little pockets of time and energy that we often give away without even realizing it.
And remember, you have the power to change your experience. It might feel uncomfortable at first to set those boundaries, especially if people are used to you always saying yes.
Right, it can feel awkward,
It can.
but I imagine it gets easier over time.
It does, definitely. With practice and a healthy dose of self-compassion, you can create a life that feels more aligned with your values and needs.
What really resonated with me from this blog is this idea that boundaries aren't selfish.
Oh, I love
They're actually a form of self-care.
Right.
And when we take care of ourselves, we're better equipped to show up for, the people and things that really matter to us.
That's such an important point. We often think of boundaries as being about, like, keeping people OUT,
Yeah.
but they can also be about creating space for the things we want to let in,
Right.
More joy, more peace, more authentic connections.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, what is that one boundary that you're ready to tackle? Take a moment to reflect on it. Maybe even jot it down somewhere valuable as a reminder to yourself.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yes.
Be kind to yourself, celebrate those small wins, and keep practicing. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of boundary setting.
It was a good one.
Yeah, and remember, you deserve to feel safe, respected, and empowered in your own life. So go out there, set those boundaries, and reclaim your peace.
And if you stumble along the way, that's okay. We all do. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep practicing. You got this.